Yes. So more of the time spent waiting for the purchases.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to this reconvened meeting of the council deliberating the long-term plan submissions. Just to welcome back everyone who may be watching on the live stream, also to councillors and staff in the chamber and elsewhere. We've got Councillor Lynn has just stepped out temporarily. She'll be back very shortly, and otherwise we're all here. Sorry, Deputy Mayor Halaleli is still an apology for the meeting. So just moving straight to the where we left off, I'll just get Mr. Palmer just to introduce the next bit.
Yeah, so obviously got through quite a bit of what was submitted to us yesterday, but still got quite a bit to go through. So clearly, yeah, the picture we're facing is a challenging one financially. We don't need to go over that again, but there's some tough decisions that need to be made, particularly over what happens, what we can deliver over the next 2 years, and how we keep that affordable in terms of our debt, but also our rates rises and achieve that balanced budget as well. So what we're going to do in a moment is we're going to go through just a recap what we covered yesterday without relitigating it, but also there's some things we didn't cover, but the team just want to check in that we've captured what you did ask for, so that we can do the further work on that. We then want to go to the projects list and have a look at that. There's some work that the senior management team did and some recommendations coming through from that, which will set out for you to consider whether you accept those recommendations or not. And then there'll still be some further work to do. And then this afternoon, we want to get into the big consultation topics that were in the long-term plan consultation. Not to formally resolve them, there might be somewhere we need some further work to be done. So, for example, the Beach Road one, clarifying which of the options you really want to look at and whether you need more information on those ahead of more formal decision later on. So with that, I'm handing over to Amanda.
Thanks for that introduction. So just an update, a reminder of yesterday's conversations. We started off with a briefing on the financials. So just reminding everyone, we went out for consultation with the rates increase of 10.3%. The budgets we are working on behind the scenes at the moment are a few percent higher than that. We're trying to bring expenditure down and thus the rates increase, but it's challenging in this environment. And we're bearing in mind that the feedback from submitters was that they would like lower rates increases. There's also the issue of balancing the budget. So we talked a wee bit yesterday about different options, and we'll come back on the 15th of April and have some really detailed conversations around those options and have a look at the effect that they have on operating budgets. We will be able to go through by department in depth and also challenge levels of service and what's happening in each of those departments. So that'll be a big conversation on the 15th of April, and we'll also come back again on the 28th of April to discuss that in depth. And then just reiterating about the debt cap. So we were getting close. If Three Waters was remaining in-house, we would reach our debt cap in the 28th financial year. So yeah, our finances are really tight if Waters is kept in-house. And if it does move to a separate CCO, we need to bear in mind that that entity will be rating significantly for all the waters upgrades that are required. So we want to not be doing too much within council itself. Just bear in mind that the ratepayers are paying a lot, will be paying a lot for water still over the next 10 years. So with that in mind, we went through all of the submissions, the massive listing we had yesterday, and I've just sent you an updated listing, and there was one sitting on your table when you arrived as well. So we have taken that listing and added a column F. We've gone through and put kind of a snapshot of the outcomes. So there's a lot that we are suggesting or put to the community board. They have a pool of funds and they can decide how to prioritise the works that have been requested in their specific areas. Where is it? Yeah, so there's a few that we will take up with the hall committees. The Heritage Grant Committee can consider some. There is some highlighted in green that we specifically want to include in the long-term plan. The financial impacts of that is not significant. There's a lot that's no change. So that was where a requester had asked for more information or something that was already in the long-term plan. So we haven't had to change the long-term plan for that. It's a lot of those. Then there is a good half a page of things that officers need to progress. So that's where we need to go away and get some more information before you can make an informed decision. Or we could be able to go talk to that submitter and resolve the problem. Or it could be just quick fixes, like I think there's some signage needed outside BNZ and things like that. So officers can take care of those behind the scenes, and we will bring any that we need to come back for a decision, we'll bring back to those later meetings on the 15th and 28th of April as well. And then there's a lot that are in orange to debate. So a lot of that will come through in the conversations we have today with the projects listing. And then after lunch, we're also going to talk about the big ticket items that we went out for consultation on. So, you know, beach road options. There's a lot more costings and work to do there to understand different options that we've got. The investment in tourism is another big one, what we do there. Parking strategy, toilet strategies. There'll be some conversations over the separate papers coming to council over the coming weeks where decision will be made about the overall strategy for the district, as opposed to just making a decision on a submitter's request for a toilet here or there. And roading level of service is a big one that we need to consider, our entire investment in roading across the district. So hopefully that's really helpful. You can let us know, just reply via email or something behind the scenes if there's something that you don't feel we've picked up correctly there. But we'll just keep beavering away on these and bring the financial impacts back on the 15th of April.
May I just ask one? You're saying that we email, but I'm just looking at page 3. This is a pretty, in the larger scheme of things, it's a pretty small matter, but item 543, the continuation of the annual grant for, from ourselves to the rec centre. I would have thought that would have been, in fact, I'm absolutely certain it was in the budget.
Yeah.
But I mean, all she was doing effectively was just saying, don't leave us out, but we hadn't. So I'm just curious to know why we've sort of seen include when it had been included already.
Yeah, sorry, it just had the wrong label attached to it in the original spreadsheet. So all the other ones where the budget was already included, it had a different label attached to it. So it was just a slight, a minor error on that submission. It's not asking for additional funds, it's already included. So yeah, that was addressed.
Councillor Blackler.
Thank you. Just at a quick glance, item 624, the second row down, the Kuri Creek Planting Group. Yeah, I'm not sure if I recall incorrectly the conversation yesterday, but I didn't think we were sending that one back for alternative funding, but happy to be corrected. I think, you know, given the significant amount of effort put in there from volunteers, you know, I don't think it's unreasonable what's being requested, but I think it's a small amount, but it would make a big difference to them. In 203A, that's the Civic Trust. There's the reference that it would go back to the Heritage Grants Committee. Is that to make a recommendation to council, or is that to seek the funding under the current allocation the current heritage fund.
Um,
Bottom of page 2, second from bottom on page 2.
in terms of the second one, I thought it was the latter, but you can clarify that. That's what I picked up from the conversation yesterday. In terms of the first one, the Carey Creek planting group, we're meaning basically as it's written there, the contributions can be considered from a grants budget. They can apply for a grant through that process. And then talking about partnership staff can support with funding applications and advice. So we can help enable that to happen, but the full funding is not, we're not going to put the full funding in the council budget right now. We're going to go back to them and suggest alternative funding sources and that we can help with the applications, and then they can put a submission in the normal grants process. That's what I meant by that, as opposed to putting funds in now. Does that make sense?
Just with the Curry Creek project, they are looking for ongoing funding. So if it was one-off grants, the budget would be appropriate because they're looking for ongoing funding, and because the community board's got a budget for reserves, etc. It would be best to steer this one to them. We're already taking money off the community to spend on recreational reserves, etc., and that would be an appropriate thing for them to decide. Is it a priority for them? They should go to the community board, I believe.
And yeah, just on the 203, the Suet Trust, that's not my recollection of the discussion, but I do know there was disagreement in the room, but I don't recall us suggesting it go back to that, because I mean it's a significant amount of money. I don't think the heritage balance would support that on its own, and it'd need to be a separate project.
So is everyone happy if I put that to debate? Would that be more appropriate? Okay. Thank you for that feedback. Hopefully that's helpful, so you can kind of closes the day yesterday and can see where we're heading with those decisions. Yeah, Mandy and I like working nights and weekends. Okay, and so today we're going to get stuck into the projects listing, bearing in mind that we do not want to increase rates and we don't want to breach our debt cap. So this projects listing has been through a lot of reiterations. We've been through the prioritisation last year where we had a list of must do's and can do's and should do's. And we came up with a list that we went out for consultation with at the start of March. Since then, council made a decision to defer just over 19 mil of projects on the 17th of December from the 25 annual plan budget. That's not, it's realistically, it's not going to be completed by 30 June this year. So we have deferred it. So as we go through them, I can clarify exactly how much has been, like where it's been put in this budget, but a lot of it is in the 26 column. And also SMT has considered this entire listing. So while it's been out for consultation, a lot has changed, like there's new wastewater standards very close. So we're bearing in mind that the wastewater figures could change, but we've left them as they are because that's the way the legislation is right now. So hopefully we will know in the next few weeks so we can lock those into our final budgets. Hopefully the balances, the budgets will decrease in that area. But there was a lot of other conversations that we had at SMT level where projects have been deferred or reduced. We've challenged officers about the level of investment the budget suggested in here. So yeah, a lot of them around waters, we've gone back and questioned timing of spend, adjusted where possible in terms of legislation, whether it can be spread over a couple of years to lessen that impact in the 26 financial year. This is like quite significant in terms of the drinking water standards. So the OHA water supply has just been had a project to, what do I call it, the treatment plant. So a new approach has been utilised up in Ohau. It's just been made fully operational. So that came out under 600K. And the original budget we had for Ohau in our project listing this time last year was 2 million. So that shows that the conversations we've been having with Tomato ROI, the different approaches that can be used for those small rural schemes that don't have that many residents on them. So that's a significant cost savings there. And so we've challenged like the likes of Stoneburn and Bushy Creek. So you'll see those budgets have also decreased. They might have originally been a couple of $1 million. Now we're looking at applying the Ohau approach to them. And conversations are on the cards with the Corridor ones as well. So they have significant balances, budgets put aside for Aomaku, Tokariki, all those other ones in there. Still sitting around 2 million, but we're hoping we can have a conversation around whether they can kind of copycat what we've done at Ohau. I know some of them are have a few more residents. So yeah, hopefully we can reduce those budgets in there. Those conversations are still being had. We've also looked at the likes of, so the council accommodation needs for this building. That's one that's been challenged, whether it's actually achievable, whether it will take place in this financial year. So we've kind of questioned whether that could happen in the 26 budget. The coastal resilience. So that was 2 million budgeted in the 26 financial year. We've gone back to managers and discussed spreading that over 2 financial years, 26 and 27. Just reflecting that there's a lot of work for contractors in the 26 year. So that's been spread out. A lot around the transformation program, the level of investment in technology. So that has been spread where possible and tried to incorporate into operating budgets a lot more. The toilets. So toilet renewals and replacements in this time last year, I think it was, we had a typical budget of every second year. And then, no, I think it was originally every year, it was a 200K investment. And last year we changed it to about a 300K investment every second year. Now we've decided that ELT has proposed that it's not necessary in the 26 and 27 year. Like obviously we've just done quite a lot of improvements in our toilets across the district. So we've kind of deferred that work, not necessary until 2028. What else we got? Roading, just questioning like where we can't get any NZTA funding, but it's just not a priority right now. There's a lot of investment in tourism, which we'll come back to this conversation this afternoon because it's obviously something we consult on creating an EDA and things, but wanting council to consider whether instead of funding a lot of different chunks of tourism throughout the district, whether there's a set amount that council might choose to invest and then that be distributed within them, as opposed to just quite individual. The Channel Harbour dredging was really successful. The last time we did that was in 2023. We typically have done that every third year for a price of about 300K. Because it was so successful in 2023, it's not due again until 2028. We do need to bear in mind that if something changes in that meantime, like we may have to do some work in that intervening years, but we expect that it should last longer than it has previously.
No, I shook you off the, if we can just go through and then we can address things after that. I'm sure there's more than you want to ask questions.
There's a few smaller projects throughout where we've gone back and challenged the price and whether we can do things cheaper or whether they can be deferred or pushed out potentially after Three Waters is gone, just really concentrating on these 26 and 27 financial years. Going back to the penguin colony, there's some maintenance renewals that they like considering a re-roof, viewing platform, having the conversation with the penguin colony, potentially whether there's other options as opposed to us initially funding it and loan funding it, whether it could be they fund it and it's paid off in different ways, or they're lease to buy type ways. We questioned the freezer building, whether there was any other option, cheaper options. It's not really a possibility. That's the necessary cost for safety concerns. Yeah, there's a lot of these IT sort of stuff that we've talked about previously. We've challenged what years they happen, whether there's alternative ways to do it, whether it can be sucked into the business as usual budgets a bit more. And obviously Oamaru Airport that came to council recently, and that's another challenging conversation that needs to be had about the amount of capital work we do out there for the return. Yeah, so I think that's the big ticket items, changes from recommendations from the SMT.
Thank you. Just a question. You know, one of the challenges we've had is reducing roading funding year after year because NZTA haven't matched the funding that we want to spend on that. We've already stated we don't want to reduce the funding further. Can you explain what you mean by taking out anything that doesn't have NZTA co-funding involved?
So there was a 225k project.
She's just looking for it.
It's around the 24. No, I'm not sure what one it is. It might be 2487. Minor roading improvements.
Can you say which page it is, because the numbers aren't in order?
It's from SMT. So
on page 58,
roading is all on the second page.
and it's about the 5th line down. No, it's not. It's more than that. 2487 is about the 8th one down.
Right,
On this
thank you.
Yeah, so minor roading improvements, that 850k balance there includes some carry forwards from 2025 and some funding that is not fully financially assisted. So yeah, we just proposed that council reconsider that. Well, it's a conversation we need to have about the level of service, level of investment in roading at this time, like in these 2 financial years where times are tough, whether you still want to proceed with that.
Thank you. Councillor Hopkins.
Look, it was a very minor question with regard to the dredging.
Use a microphone.
Sorry, it was a very minor question with regard to the dredging. You were talking about the cost of 300,000 for the last use of the dredge, but I'm pretty sure that when we agreed to this new approach, we actually said we would rate annually for it. Is that still the case? I mean, all I was really asking was whether it was a $300 rate charge, or whether we were still accumulating money annually in order to enable that to happen on a 3-yearly basis as agreed.
It would only come in every 3 years, so we would rate in the year that it happens. So we're proposing in the 28 financial year. The 26 and 27 years, the rates increases are too high, so this is a way that we can reduce the rates impact in 26 and 27 and only rate in 28 when it's necessary. So we are not rating in 26 and 27 to put money aside in a reserve for 28.
But the cost's not going to change, so effectively you're just dumping the whole lot in one rate a year.
Because that's the year that we have capacity to do so. In 2028, when Three Waters potentially moves to another entity, it's just a way of reducing our rates increase in the 26 financial year.
Right.
Councillor Personal.
Yeah, going back to your 2487 minor roading improvements, 37 million over 9 years is hardly minor. But how does that, what is it, I mean, Mark's the one to answer. What does that include, or is that part of our roading contract out there? And where's that sort of money come from, and what's being done with it when you consider you've got other projects on here with drainage and, you know, other aspects of the roading? I mean, that's your minor road improvements just about 3 times, 4 times as much as our gravelling program.
So,
You know,
this particular category of road funding is not funded by, in this 3-year period from NZTA. So these figures that were in here were what we were expecting them to fund, but they actually haven't. And so that's why we're suggesting that they can be, taken out in these 2 years, because unless you just want to spend the local share on it.
Can you explain a bit about what that?
Oh, so the fund is actually for when it says roading improvements. So that's anything new you add to the road, or any safety improvements that you want to carry out on your roading network.
But when you talk about safety improvements, they'd be governed by NZTA, wouldn't they? I mean, that's just a matter of applying for it and going for it. I mean, but anyway, what you're doing sounds good to me. If you're going to delete the whole 37 million, it's great.
Yeah, so I think that's, we're flagging that as something that needs to be debated. Like, obviously there's a few roading submissions yesterday as well. So a few requests for new seals and things like that. So I think that's a big picture conversation that we have to have about the overall roading strategy and levels of service, the investment that we want to put into roads in these next couple of years, when we know that we have financial constraints and resourcing constraints.
So some information that I would like is to have some property examples, some rural ones and some urban ones, particularly in the rural sector, unintensified, so non-irrigated farms, and looking at what their rate contribution to roading has been over the last 10 years or so, looking at how much have they been paying. My concern is that each year we haven't been spending enough on roads. Each year we've got, particularly in earlier years, we've had quite a lot of irrigation, intensification, a lot of conversions from dry land farms to dairy farms. Those farms, if they went up 4 times in value and capital value, then they paid 4 times the amount in road rates. But we didn't capture that as a separate amount. What it did was just level off some of the others so that they didn't have the same increases, or they may have had some decreases. So it'd be good to see what those ones are, so that we can see, you know, have we actually, you know, have they been increasing their contribution over the years, when we probably should have been capturing that that extra funding from intensified farms, because they were creating more traffic and heavier traffic and more damage to roads. So my concern, and it's was represented by one of the submissions, was that rural roads are not, you know, they are going backwards, and we need to spend more money on them, I believe. So my preference would be actually to put more money in. It doesn't matter if it's not subsidised, but we actually need to get back to some of the roads that are too short on gravel. We need to get them back to a standard where they are better, and it's, I think, appropriate to loan fund some of those sorts of upgrades, because it's because things have dropped behind more than they should have. So getting that information will just help us see how has that spend changed on those dry farms, and also in urban areas. Have we just been cross-subsidising and actually not increasing the amount overall? Mr. Palmer?
Yeah, I think the whole roading picture, I think, warrants some time in one of your April sessions to look at, you know, where the money is coming from, where the money is going, what the level of services you want. And I think that's a dedicated focus area. I think the challenge you'll still come back down to, though, is overall there's, you know, too much in the budget here, and roading is one of your biggest areas, and you've not got much wriggle room on, you know, the waters. And I think we've had a good look at that. I think, it could be challenged a little bit more, but the net effect of what SMT did. So we started off with what was 77 million in project listings for next year. And the changes have brought that down to about 66, although there's some things there that Amanda has suggested you consider, which could bring that down further. I think in terms of level of deliverability, we think that 30 to 35 million is about right in terms of what we're able to deliver. Next year is an exception because you've got the event centre already locked in, you've got Kakanui Bridge already locked in, so got the Forester Gallery. So those are all contracted, and yes, they require some capacity, but they're essentially contracted out. So that could take you to about 50 million. So that there's still about 16 million too much in next year. And all the impact that has on rates and debt levels as well. And so the effect of some of what we've done is push some of that out, again, kicking the can down the road a little bit, as well as challenging costs. So you'll see in the year after, it's about 35 million, which is about right. So there's not much more you could shove into that year unless you're going to take other stuff out. And then there's more scope in following years based on an assumption that where we get to with water, but clearly there's decisions still to be made on what happens with water.
John, and then Jim.
We just make your own rules.
Yeah, you just do it.
Look, just looking at the roading situation and in terms of the NZTA subsidy, they're subsidising currently at 57% of the total cost, but they're also like us at the whim of the government. So where previously under the previous government they had a program of safety and roading improvements, the current government has said that they don't have an interest in that, and so the rules of the game are changed. But I totally agree with the sentiment that we need to actually have a major workshop on roading and some very hard conversations with our community.
Councillor McKay.
Yeah, I'll take that further, and if you want me to be totally blunt, keep your hands off our roading for the rural people. They pay a lot of rates, and if you look down all these districts, and I know they're not all right, but there's very seldom a mention of any district at all that has got stuff in for the long-term plan. To me, water and roading are the most important things to the rural sector, and whether one person lives there or not, they pay the equivalent of rates to get their produce into town. And proactive maintenance is far cheaper than reactive.
Thank you. Totally agree. Councillor Blackhead and Councillor Hopkins.
Oh, thank you. I just support the call for a separate session, but it would be really good to go into that session having had that analysis done that Mayor Kirch is requesting, and even in line with what Councillor McCone's talking about there, having some analysis about where the funds are going towards roading, and is there any cross subsidisation happening, and what way is that flowing, etc., etc.
Yeah, look, just coming back to the conversation between Councillor Percival and Mr. Reynoldson on 2487. As I understood Mr. Reynoldson to say, the proposal is that we don't spend any of the $850,000 identified in those first 2 years. But I took him to also indicate or infer that the NZTA subsidies were still in place for the following years when we have 4 and 5 million annual expenditure budgets. Am I correct in that assumption, or is Councillor Percival correct when he suggests that essentially the decision we're taking today is to put a line through the entire $37 million worth of proposed expenditure?
In response, Councillor Hopkins, so the budget line items from 28 outwards are what we believe we require to deliver our rating programs. However, that conversation is still to be had, as each of the tranche of funding that we get for rating is every 3 years. So that'll be another discussion in the future for the infrastructure team to have with NZTA as to, and with yourselves as to what you'll support.
So to be absolutely clear then, what officers are proposing today is that a total of 1.7 million, 850 times 2 is taken out of the budgets.
All I'm saying is that's what SMT recommends we have a conversation about. We need to have further debate about. I will bring the analysis the Mayor has requested, and there is some submissions that say to debate roading levels of service. That whole conversation will occur on the 15th of April. No decisions are being made today. No decisions will be made on the 15th of April. We'll workshop it. We'll look at various options, and then we will decide at the end of April at key directions what you decide to put in the LTP. This is just SMT's recommendation is if we don't have NZTA funding, rein it back for the next couple of years, and then we can look at it potentially after Three Waters is gone when the finances are a bit more sustainable.
I'm just looking at Councillor Holding. Did you want to say something?
I don't know, I think the CEO, so I'll just deal with Amanda's opening statement about telling departments and projects, their budgets. And then, I think Alex mentioned that not of all is deliverable. So you have pushed some of the things out, but is that just in the roading or the total budget projects?
Yeah, so I think that follows on nicely to the next part of the day. So I think that's a good updated reminder of what happened yesterday. In terms of going through today, so we're going to spend the morning going through the LTP initiatives. The waters, the first page and a half, you may recall last year, the budgets were about double that, around the 30 mil. And then we decided to put a cap on. We set a cold hard cap of $15 million debts to try and get waters within that level, because we felt that's what was achievable. So I didn't want to touch on the waters projects too much because we've reduced them significantly over the past year, and we are waiting for the outcome of the wastewater standard changes. So hopefully that will reduce through that process. A lot of these figures in 2026 includes the carry forwards that were moved from 25 to 26. So that's why it's currently sitting at 21 as opposed to the 15 that we originally went out for consultation with. But as I said, we're hoping that that will reduce with the wastewater changes, and also the conversations that we're looking to have shortly with Corridale and different approaches we can do around the water treatment upgrades over the next year or two.
So just on that, because I do want to touch on water, I believe we should be aspirational around how we do these projects. We have had many conversations with Taumata ROI around acceptable solutions. They are changing the standards. They are looking at point of entry treatment far more favourably for rural schemes. And I think we should be looking to cost them accordingly, that point of entry treatment is used, that it's not centralised treatment, so that we're not treating stock water when we don't need to, that we are treating water, or water is being treated going into the house. Also that their comments around the household, the property being responsible for maintaining that point of entry treatment unit, rather than it being a council responsibility, which does load the cost on if council wants to take responsibility for those. We don't need to. I would much rather we show what that could look like. We went along with the OHA situation, even though it could have still been cheaper, but because we have had the challenges we've had there, and you have a lot of respect for the work that Gareth did on getting that particular one over the line. We've done that. It's more cost than they want, and that community is looking for subsidies from the council as to how they can afford the individual costs. But yeah, that is what it is, and there was a time frame on that. If we can get these other ones, their costs down further to rather than 800,000, something that's closer to around 300,000, I believe, depending on the number of households that need these units, then that would be very helpful. And it would also send a clear message to Te Mata Arawai and the government that we do expect them to do the work to actually while making sure that water is safe, that they actually make sure it's affordable as well.
So I think there are opportunities potentially to get the water costs down. I guess the challenge we have at the moment is until those standards are finalised and until we're able to cost it out, what I wouldn't want to do is provide you with a budget number in there that hasn't been tested in some way. So I think we've been aspirational in saying, hey, we've done a scheme, we've done it cheaper, so we don't expect to pay any more than that. But that's not what we're wanting to spend. That's that's a budget provision with a view to seeing what the standards are when they're finalised and working through revised schemes and looking at those acceptable solutions to look at getting those costs down further. I wouldn't want us to put an arbitrary figure in there at the moment that is untested, but we can certainly take that back and question again whether there is scope to shave more cost off those budget provisions. There's been 40 or 50 houses rebuilt in Ohau, and they've all put point of entry treatment in there, so there is some test to that particular system, but we'll see how we go. Councillor Thompson and then Councillor Percival.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I welcome just using my local knowledge and my HEMO that we've reduced the budget on the stone burn from 3.5 million to 500,000, which is absolutely brilliant. But knowing that there's only 30 odd houses on that scheme, I would suggest that if we go to point of entry, we're probably going to be down to way less than 500,000.
Councillor Percival and then Councillor Blake.
In my time in council, I've been through this process about 3 or dozen or 25 times. So the continual carryover of the rural scheme upgrades, which is in excess of 4 million, why does it keep coming up? I mean, if we can't do it, we can't do it. If we propose to do it, then how does this work as far as rating for it or whichever? But as Councillor Thompson just pointed out, this whole thing could be blown out of the water in the next 6 months to a year with point of entry or whatever under the new regime. Why are we continuing to put this 4 million plus into the LTP, AP, whatever P you like?
So the first thing is to say, why is it carrying forward? Is because we're dealing with a constant changing picture. So I was sent a letter by Te Mata Arawai saying that we had to have all these rural schemes compliant by the end of last year. And every chief exec in the country got those letters. And there was pushback from the sector and from the rural community in particular about why we had to have these massive capital investments in plants and equipment for schemes where there was predominantly going to stock. So there's been a lot of to and fro involving government ministers, councils, Te Mata Arawai, and we're still not at the end of that process. We still haven't got a final solution of what's acceptable. And so it's right that we have budget provision in there, but the budget provision we did have was for the big investment in capital and plant. We've started to reduce that. We haven't done it for Corridale because we need to have that discussion. We're not managing the Corridale scheme. We need to have the discussion with the Corridale water schemes as to how the picture has changed and what they want to do. So I think when we've had that, then those figures will likely come down again from that. But what we don't want to be doing is being in a position where we've got unrealistic budgets. So they've been gradually reducing as the picture has changed. But until we know what those final acceptable solutions are and we've costed it out. We can't be saying that, oh, it's, it's a much lower figure. We need to do the work on that when we know what the acceptable solutions are that have been finalised.
All right, and no, it's not like he's giving an answer to your question. And and just to emphasise, there's no cost impact on the schemes until the work's actually delivered. So even though the amounts have been carried forward, it doesn't have a rating impact till project's complete, the loans raised, and then the charges start after that. So it hasn't had any adverse effect on the financial position of those schemes while those projects have been carried forward.
Councillor Blackman. Oh, you're right. Councillor Thompson.
Can I just ask a question around the carryovers? I'm sure I recall the term that contractor availability has affected the delivery of. Did I pick up that is the right information? I just find that ironic when as a shareholding councillor, I attend Whitestone contracting meetings where they're continually saying, is there more work out there? We've got the capacity.
The most common work that Whitestone has been undertaking has been basically pipeline renewals rather than the more specialist work such as treatment plants and reservoirs. So it's really the unavailability of those more specialist services that have been causing issues. We have been consistently getting, I think, between $10 and $12 million worth of renewals out the door, and that's essentially what this is indicating as well, because they are essentially easier to design for the work to be undertaken by a broader array of contractors. So, we had a peak year when we received the additional funding from the Crown. It was really one of the few times there's been sort of almost no strings attached. So we did scale things up, but we've now settled back in what's indicated in here is a reasonably steady level of work. I think that the thing that we need to look at next is actually saying, well, right, this is a 3-year program than a single year program, and moving into that style of procurement. So have a single procurement exercise that spanned over a number of years to give certainty to the council and to the contractors.
So just for my own thick understanding, what you're saying is it's not the general contracting that's been the delay, it's the specialist services.
Councillor McGowan.
So again, I'm just a bit like Jim, we're thick at the minute. So this page here has been transferred to what's coming through to the next. So we're $19 million behind before we start at 20 million bucks before we start with what's going on. So therefore, we've got to go through and bring this accordingly. No, thank you.
Yeah, so just a reminder, so you agree to change in process. So instead of having carry forwards come after you've just set a budget, you wanted to do a review in year, and so that they can be incorporated into the next budget, so that we don't have that carry forward process at the start of a new financial year. So that's why you've got them now. So, but it does make the job a bit harder.
Councillor Percival, and then Councillor Hopkins.
Just another one for Mark, I guess. Line item 1197 and 4441, which is rural main renewals. 441 says Oamaru, but in location it says Ahuriri. So that may be a little bit confusing.
That'll be expensive.
So the other is district wide, and that's a total of 200,000. That's a total, if we're going with this, for over $1 million for those two projects, and a carry on after the first year of $500,000 a year, totaling over the 9 years for both line items in excess of 4.5 mil. What on earth are you doing?
Good question. I suppose the name of the project doesn't actually extend out to the area. So Oamaru Rural Water Main Renewals is for the schemes outside of Oamaru that are on the Oamaru Water Scheme. Okay, and then when the other rural water schemes that are in there, so likes of Lower Waitaki and those ones which are on different schemes, that's why they have a separate line item for those.
But still,
I think just to re-emphasize, like I think everyone's on the same page about waters.
Yeah.
These figures, obviously the 21, we started with a cap of 15, we've put the carry forwards on. We don't want to just keep putting in budgets that's not financially achievable, not resourcing wise. So the waters team, everyone behind the scenes is working, having these conversations. We've got to talk to Corridale, and these numbers will come back again. When you decide, make your decisions at the end of April, we will have revised figures. We'll have a better idea of what's more realistic in terms of waters projects. We don't want to spend too much time on waters today. Yeah, we've left them as they are in terms of like they've reduced as much as possible what's realistic, and we know that there's more work to do. We are completely on the same page that we want to do the most efficient approach. So we're just kind of want to move on from waters.
Yeah, no, I'd
also
just
got
say
to
that-
appreciate that we as governance look at these. We don't understand the background into them. We're having a visual, and sometimes it smacks us in the ear because we can't understand why the amount is so much. So this is the difficulty with what we have to do in this pedantic way that we do it.
So, I mean, again, a lot of these are budget figures. They're not, you know, some of them won't have business cases. A lot of them will need to go out to tender. But, you know, just to sort of close off the waters bit, if we can, the basis we're working on is you agreed 15 million per year. That's currently at 21 for next year. We're looking at how we get it down to 15 million for next year and for the year after. If that's acceptable to you. If you want more than that, let us know. If you want less than that, that'd be challenging.
Just going to go John McCone on this particular topic. I take it that you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, so the waters thing, as I said before, it's a changing environment, and I think, you know, stormwater doesn't come into the factor till 2028. I think, is that what I heard? Someone might correct me. So why have we got that in the budget at all? Can we not move it across? So it's the top 4 items. And on other things, as far as water goes, there's quite a few reflections back to capacity upgrades and studies and everything else. Well, those studies I think are actually probably something we can put off till we know which direction we're going in with the joint CCO. I think that there's no point doing a study and not being cynical. Probably a lot of them have been done as well, and they're still in the cupboard. There's a document somewhere of 300 odd pages that was done for the annual plan for 2021 to 2031. It's there. So a lot of the work has already been done somewhere. And I have one other question, which is on the, I can't find it just straight off. It is about the building for the Oamaru supply. Do we know anything about that? 4547.
So you're referring to the Oamaru water strategy?
Yeah, 4547. That's got build and TV.
Phases 1, build, and something else it's cut off. So building the strategy, is it?
Yeah. So yeah. So the first phase of it is to develop a strategy for Oamaru water. So dealing with the consent issues and the resilience issues that we've got within there. So it's rethinking how we have a resilient water supply and dealing with the consenting issues that are coming up. And that work needs doing. Otherwise, you might find you've run out of road and have no consent for water for most of your population.
A rough number in my head, that's about $4.5 million, and I think that's a wee bit extreme, because then you carry on to part 2 of that, which is, I've lost that too, sorry. and then it carries on for 2 million per year for the next 6 years. Which is 12 million in total. 4597.
Okay, I've got a few hands up. Who wants to talk about water still? Councillor Blackler.
Yeah, I take on board your points, Amanda, about there's more work to be done in all this. So I just have a couple of overarching questions. So you mentioned about everyone's focus on completing the works efficiently or as efficiently as possible. So my question to that is, does that include kind of creative thinking around, incorporation of acceptable solutions, as Gary's alluded to? Like, because if we use Stoneburn as the example, one of the issues when Taumata Arawai was down here was that we needed to, I know we're getting into detail, but it illustrates what I'm trying to say, that the turbidity issue and that issue was impacting the ability of the household to accept the filtration at point of receipt. So one of the questions that I asked when we had our session with Taumata Arawai was, essentially, could you have a rainwater acceptable solution that could occasionally top up with rural water scheme supply when the turbidity is low? Because logically, when it's raining, turbidity is high. When it's not, turbidity is low. So the two should kind of work hand in hand. The answer to that question was yes, you could potentially go down that path. But I guess my question is that the level of creativity we're looking at, or are we not going quite that far? And then my second question is, let's say we push out of our target of getting to 15 million. Let's say we achieve that by pushing projects out rather than bringing the cost of the project down. If we then go out to complete the projects and there are savings realised, will they be redistributed to other projects, or will they just be as a default, will they always be taken as savings to the ratepayer?
In terms of your first question, short answer is yes. So we're generally always looking at the best, when I say most efficient, I mean most cost effective and what will achieve the standards in the quickest, most efficient way. Like the example you gave, I think we have a report on file from a few years ago that the rainwater wasn't significant enough to try that approach. So there's a lot of work happening behind the scenes to work out the best approach. There's conversations happening with Taumata Arawai all of the time. Standards are changing. So yeah, just these are a lot of these budgets were put in place over a year ago when the standards were completely different. The conversations hadn't even started to develop with Taumata Arawai. And then now we've put the carry forwards, like some 25 projects on top of it. And so it needs a complete relook across the board. All of these waters projects, we've had the example of a different approach that was taken in Ohau that wasn't even on the cards last year. And we're still thinking outside the box about what next other approaches could be for the different schemes. We want to have those conversations with Corridale and make sure that they're considering outside the box thinking as well. So yeah, it's definitely on the cards, and this will be reworked and come back with completely different budgets at deliberations at the end of April. And then in terms of cost savings and things, it's your prerogative whether you want to. So say something that's penciled in for 2 million and it comes in at 500. It's up to you whether you want to utilise that to go towards another project or bank it as a savings. Put it away in reserves.
Thank you, Amanda. Just to clarify that question, I'm talking about once the budget's set, budgets with the department, if there are, let's say your example is $2 million project comes out at 500,000 because we managed to realise something through acceptable solutions, where does that 1.5 million go? Or do we need to establish some criteria around that?
So like a prime example is the Ohau example. So I think it was budgeted at 2 million and it's come and cost was 600. We've loan funded that, and that is what it's going to cost the ratepayer going forward now that it's complete. that extra 1.6 hasn't been drawn down. It just, we haven't had to fund it. So the ratepayers aren't paying for it. It's a cost saving.
So
It hasn't gone towards any, the
So it-
department hasn't used it for anything else.
that can't be redirected towards other.
Not unless you give us direction to do so.
Okay, thank you.
Jim and then Rebecca.
Yeah, look, coming back to this Tamata Arawai matter, and if you allow me for a moment or two, just looking at the broader context, we have more hints in the last week or so that the government's contemplating rates, caps and other significant imposts on, and I think probably ultimately unwise imposts on the local government sector. The difficulty I'm having today is that the difficulty you're having is you keep on saying Tamata Arawai is changing and they're looking at new standards and so on. But you are not able to wave a piece of paper a la Neville Chamberlain Peace in Our Time and say, these are the new standards. This is what they have told us we can and can't do. I believe there's a real PR issue here. We need to recruit fed farmers, we need to recruit provincial MPs, and we need to actually either individually as a council or through the sector more widely, actively demand that Tamata Arawai sort itself out and deliver standards that are affordable and achievable and actually meet the government's objectives of reducing costs and enabling development. Equally, what we could be doing today for our own benefits, and I understand why you're saying the budgets need to stay because we don't absolutely know what the new standards are. That is correct. But we do have one example where we had a $2 million scheme that is now $600,000. And that has been consented or agreed by Tamata Arawai. In my view, we are therefore able, I would have thought, to go through all our budgets and amend them to that.
We explained at the start, we've done that. That's what we've done. We've slashed the budgets based on OHOW. We've slashed the budgets apart from the Corridale schemes, which needs discussing with Corridale. Neville Chamberlain's bit of paper wasn't worth anything. It's just a reminder of your history there. But yeah, we have to wait until Tamata Arawai have agreed those standards before we can say for sure how much further we can slash those budgets. So we've cut the budgets. That's what you're seeing in here. That's part of the, we started off with 77 million, it's down to 66 million. That's part of that. We've cut the water budgets and we've committed that we will look to cut them further. We will look at the acceptable solutions, but we can't say we're going to do that until we know what they are and what's going to be acceptable and what isn't.
I think we should just passively, I think what I'm saying is,
Jim, if I could just say, obviously your words are powerful. Tamata Arawai has said that they are going to be coming out consultation on the acceptable solutions in April and early May, with the expectation that they will be able to implement them hopefully in July. We will have one of their representatives speak to us about that at our 15th of April session. So just organise those things. So they are being very responsive, and hopefully we'll get a better indication then. And I'd suggest that if we're going to have that session, that we ask for some of the Corridale water reps to be here as well.
So can I just add, we're trying to set a budget here. There's a danger we get too much into the detail of things we can't resolve now. And I think allowing time in the programme to resolve those, accepting that, there's more work to do and we're still working with some unknowns here, but the commitment is there to try and get that down to, what you said, which is 15 million per year, including genuine cost savings where they're achievable. But it wouldn't be responsible or prudent to artificially set budgets low and then potentially overspend those budgets, when we don't have the full information to be able to cut those budgets any further. We've cut the budgets based on what we know. We could go further, but there's things we don't know at this stage. So I think making a prudent budget allocation and interrogating it further with Tamata Arawai is, the best way forward. Otherwise, you're in danger of having budgets that don't actually do the job and then being non-compliant.
Rebecca.
Thank you. Sorry, perhaps just for the benefit of those of us who haven't gone through this before, I'm not very clear on what we're achieving here or what the process is. What are we actually trying to achieve here? Like, is it just time for questions? Are we actually working through things in an order?
We're working through water at the moment, which is first in there, but we do need to work our way through. Rather than go line by line, we are talking in more principled, I think, with a lot of what we are talking about, but it's inevitably, some of those lines are very important lines and we need to address them as well. So it's certainly giving feedback on that, and Councillor Percival wants to totally endorse what you've said.
Absolutely, Rebecca. You just put it all in one line. Excellent. 4588, which is a bit scary, Mark, because Oamaru North End failing water, mate. Good God, that sounds terrible. And we're going to spend 6.1 million on
Falling.
Oh, mine says failing. It hasn't got the eye on it.
Okay.
Oh no, not scary now.
He's all happy. Councillor McCone.
So, yeah, look, give me the authority to get out a pen and I could reduce this pretty quickly, but I'm not allowed to do that apparently. But where I'm coming from, how many of these short or long-term plans are actually achievable in the next 3 years? So we've got carryover projects right now that have come through, and we're looking at those now that have come into this coming year's job thing. So rather than go around in circles and work out what we're going to take in around, how many of them are actually achievable and how many of them are actually prioritised that must be done rather than need to be done?
So that's what I was trying to say at the start. Yeah, we think somewhere between 30 and 35 million spend is achievable in a normal year. We think next year is abnormal in that you've got some big projects that are already contracted out. So the event centre, Kakanui Bridge, Forester Gallery, which means that you could be spending about 50 million. And that breaks down into, we think 15 million in water is achievable. So you've got 66 in there at the moment, which we think is about 16 million too much of projects. So, if you agreed all that, we wouldn't be able to deliver it all. And it would have a detrimental effect on the rates and the borrowing limits that you wanted to set. So that's the overall picture.
Yeah, Mr. Palmley, that's very good. John and I have discussed this, and we reckon that if we commandeered all the construction equipment and resources in the South Island, we still wouldn't get through a quarter of the work that's processed and programmed for the next year.
So I don't know what you base that on. Our delivery rates, which we've been working on, so when I came here, our delivery rate of our capital program was about 60%. We're on course for, we said we wanted to get that up to the 80 to 90%. We're on course to be able to do that, but at a level of about 30 to 35 million spend. If we go over that, then we don't think we'll be able to do it. And that's to do with our capacity. That's to do with the capacity out there in the market to deliver.
Just a wee detail before I go to Councillor Wood. If Coronel Water are basically looking after the schemes there, how much capacity does that take of us? I'm just thinking, not every dollar of spend is necessarily the same when it comes to resourcing.
I'm not sure what the answer is to that. I mean, it takes financial capacity. I think, whatever they do, it needs to be in agreement with us. It's, whilst I know historically that, the emotional sense of ownership is with those communities, but the legal sense of ownership is with this council, and we don't have any agreement. So, we probably haven't spent enough time and capacity on working with our partners in Corridor Water there.
Well, just on that, it's, we said we haven't reduced their figures. Well, I don't think we can let them spend more than they should be spending, and I don't think they have any intention of spending more than they need to spend. So I'd be very comfortable with reducing that, which would take, I don't know what those total numbers are, but take 2 or 3 million off of those that next period of time. the coming year.
So I think it's our intention to reduce it, but to do it in a partnership way in discussion with them, rather than arbitrarily deciding around this table what you're going to give to people. I think having that discussion and bringing that back as part of that wider water discussion would be important, I think, in terms of that partnership.
Yep. Equally, we've accepted it for ourselves and for our ratepayers, so that's what we need to be doing. Councillor Linwood.
Thank you. Going off topic a wee bit, just following on from what Councillor Ryan said, I'm finding this conversation very difficult to follow. We're like going round and round and round in circles. We're not making any progress. We're trying to like cut the budgets, but we're just stuck. And I really would like a bit of a process to move forward, if that's possible, please.
Yeah, well, I guess we wanted to use this time, like I was trying to introduce the project listing and saying we just skip over waters because, that 15 mil, we're trying to reduce it down to that. We didn't want to have any conversation. So we've just spent an hour and a half of the 2 hours allocated talking about waters. So yeah, the waters will be looked at behind the scenes. It will come back. We've got all of the messages, all the conversation, everyone, I think we're on the same page and we are working on it. You will see revised numbers in April. Same story with roading. I think we will come back and have the conversation on the 15th of April. So we'll park the conversation about roading because we'll just not go around circles around that one as well. And Network Waitaki Event Centre is the last one on that page. It's halfway built. Well, not halfway built, but it's in train. So there's no use having a conversation around that. Then we have a total of 3 waters, roading and event centre of 58 million. Alex has outlined that what is financially achievable historically was around the 30 million mark. And the auditors gave us a tagged audit opinion in the consultation document because we were looking at higher than 30 million, which they felt was achievable, not achievable based on our previous record of around 30 million. And financially, around the 30 million mark is what we want to aim for as well. But we can bear in mind that Sports and Event Centre is happening off to the side and we're achieving 50% funding for that. When I say 50%, I say that loosely. We're only contributing 15 million towards that $32.9 million spend. And the Kakanui Bridge is kind of a standalone separate project as well. So we're thinking that when we get to the end of this page, we've kind of reached our cap. So when you turn the page, this is the conversation that we wanted to have today. There's 8.396 worth of projects there that we feel are not in the must-do category that need reconsidering because we feel that they are outside what is financially and resourcing wise achievable for the 26 financial year. If we mainly just concentrate on 2026 and look to see if there's any reductions that can be made or deferrals. That is where we wanted to spend the time today.
So, the problem is, a year ago we were wanting to look at the operational budgets, and we were told no, we couldn't have those, and we couldn't. We needed to spend time on this. And the reality is, all of these things contribute to costs, and we've already talked about water and identified where some savings should be able to be made, and take some of those numbers off. And it will be in the millions. And I don't appreciate that that we're not being given the opportunity to actually understand that. And we're just getting told to skip past that. It's not overly helpful. We haven't had the opportunity of spending time before today on where we're at right at the moment. And, I think that there needs to be an understanding that we want to actually do have some control of what the process is. There wasn't any session with me before today around how this was supposed to run. So I don't know some of the stuff that we're now getting told around what the expectations were. So I don't appreciate that I'm getting put in a position where I'm having to answer to what's happening when we're all trying to muddle our way through and get an understanding of the situation. I don't feel that we're being supported in the way that we could have been. I'll just raise that. Tim, did you have your hand up?
But just back to the, yeah, I mean, I just support Councillor Ryan as well, and I mean, I did try yesterday to try and establish some principles that we could work to right at the beginning, but and you know, Paul and I have shared some ideas offline, but so whether or not it's been valuable to revisit them and people could feed in, but just in regards to trying to get back to the 30 or 35, sorry, I'm just having a little bit of trouble reconciling that with the so in theory, if nothing below waters, roading and sport and event centre comes out, that leaves the 8.4. But whereabouts, which I just can't find the dollar spend for the Forester Gallery for next financial year.
The Forester Gallery is actually incurring the bulk of it in the 25 financial year. So that's
That's why there's not a large
Yeah.
amount there. Okay, so yeah, so it really is the so you've got 9.5 Kakanui Bridge, 17K for 17 mil for the sport and event centre deducted off the 66, which effectively, if you assume roading and water remains steady state, we need to cut out about 8 mil.
Yeah, so I'm just kind of saying, rule of thumb, if historically we've done 30 million, circa 30 million, 30, 35, and take inflation into account as well. And then you've got Kakanui Bridge, so that takes us up to 40. And then the sports and events centre is 15. So then you're getting up around 55. So looking at this list of 66, you're about 10 mil too high. So we thought, yes, we will look at waters. We hope to reduce that down to the 15. So there's, 5 or 6 million there. Potentially more, we will try. And then, yeah, we wanted to concentrate our time on these last couple of pages where there's a bit more choice. There's no legislative requirements to have many of these done in the 26 financial year. They're not so much the must-dos, they're more the nice-to-haves. And that's the feedback that we had in submissions that, like stick to your knitting, the roading and the waters should be where we spend our money. And then these ones we could reconsider today.
So in theory, we're trying to cut this in half effectively through either rationalisation of projects or deferrals or whatever.
Ideally, that's like from a financial point of view, that's where I'm coming from. And I think that's where the message we've got from the ratepayers as well. Like the rates increases, the balanced budget, the debt levels. It would be lovely to cut this in half. But yeah, it's your prerogative what you feel is a priority in the 26 financial year.
And sorry, just one final supplementary in relation to the list that we received this morning based on discussions yesterday. What's the worst case number if you include the two debate items? What's kind of the ballpark loose number that would impact that line further? So we kind of need to take that into consideration as well.
Yeah, so like looking at the greens and oranges on that sheet, it's probably around 10 million debt. So that would be included in this as well. But there's a lot of similar conversations. So a lot of the submissions yesterday were around levels of service for roading, whether to, the big ticket ones are Beach Road, and whether to Tarsi or certain roads and things like that. And then a lot of water work as well. So you're kind of double counting because a lot of them will be considered in those roading and water big ticket strategy conversations anyway.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Holding and then Councillor Cowles.
Right, probably not that important right now, but just in the saying in the nice to haves, there is a few projects and the ones that we're looking at in the 8 million that I don't know how we're going to put like roofs, replacement roofs probably could have. Is it like under no sort of urgency? Just for example, I think 5615 Opera House repair, roof repairs, aquatic centre roof repairs. Are you saying they can wait though? because it's part of the 8 million. So that's not vital there.
Do you want to comment on that?
So look, it's 135 grand or something to do that, and to me, it is maintenance, but does that not come under business as usual? Is that not, can't that come out of that budget of that particular department? It seems a bit ridiculous when you've got to put it in something that's actually part of the maintenance system of the property department that must have a property arm.
Like if you think of the pool, the aquatic centre specifically, we aren't funding depreciation on that, so we aren't putting aside depreciation reserves to fund these sorts of things. So council needs to be aware when there is a significant value project like that that has to happen, that we can't just use our depreciation. We can't fund it in a normal manner like you would with another asset that you're putting depreciation funds away for.
Councillor Cowles.
Just got a question here around some of the better off funding. I see there's a number coming, a number of projects here under better off funding. I just want to get an understanding that if we do defer them, do we lose that funding? Because I believe it's got to be spent by a certain time, and that's additional. And then one other question around the digitisation of property files. I understand that it's being done by an external contractor. Are we under contract to complete that? And if we decided to push that back, what sort of ramification would that have, please?
First question, yes, we don't spend it, we lose it in terms of the better off funding. And yeah, the digitisation contract is underway, so we need to renegotiate the contract.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I share the frustration of us delving into the detail, but I also appreciate that you want some pastoral oversight from us as governance as to where we go. One of the something that came up yesterday, and looking through here today, we're looking at where we can slash and burn to survive, but maybe we also need to look at opportunities where we not necessarily make money, but we reduce our costs. So, for example, we spoke about the demolition of the Kakanui Bridge yesterday, which we budget for, but there may be an opportunity that someone tenders and removes it, which would subsidise that. I look at that we're budgeting this coming year to spend 1.4 million for the disposal of the biomass that's been removed from our sewerage ponds. Now, I know I'm not comparing apples with apples, but in Australia, that is used as a fertiliser and put on cotton fields. Is there an opportunity here for us to ask, is someone actually interested in using this? You can take it away for free.
Great.
But yeah, I don't want to get down to the weeds of specifics, but it's more the concept of where we can.
That is something that there are contractors here that do tender for different businesses, different activities. And it's like, I do know people that own companies that do exactly that here in New Zealand, that dredge dairy ponds and things, and they put it into a big sack, but it's generally used on that same field for fertilizer, because basically after that sack is dried over a period of 12 months, they then cut the sack and they disperse it over that same land rather than cart it away. However, it comes down to the tender activity at the time. It comes down to whether the person that has that capacity to do that activity gets that tender. It's really what it comes down to. And I do know that a person that has a business to do that does actively look at our tenders that we put out there as whether it's appropriate to them and their own scheme of resourcing and everything else. So, but they do have an interest in this area. So, yeah.
Just, did you put your hand up? Never saw. I heard you huffing. No. And I looked over and it's like, no, you still haven't got your hand up. Right, Councillor Huffable, first of all. And then Councillor Hopkins.
This is not applying to the document in front of us, but I think I've said before, probably 100 times, we don't look inward. We always look to what's going to happen, what we're going to do. But surely an important factor for us in this exercise is to look at the OPEX throughout organisation and departmental. And also one thing that occurs to me is that there must be a contractors and consultant budget. I mean, that's certainly an effect on what we're doing here. I'm just putting that out there.
Councillor Hopkins.
Well, looking at individual items on the second page that Amanda has said are discretionary and more likely to be able, therefore, to be resolved today. Working from the top down, we have placemaking and district identity better off funding at 590. That's fine. That's better off funding. So then we have developing the visitor economy, 195, and Waitaki. That's Waitaki ED strategy implementation 195, and then developing the visitor economy 390, and then Waitaki identity and story making 150 plus 25 in the next year. I would suggest that if we're spending 590 on better off funding for placemaking and district identity, we could probably look to prune the developing the visitor economy budget possibly. And we could also possibly look at Waitaki identity and storytelling being spread over the 2 years, 75,000 each, rather than 150 in 1 year and 25 in the next. Moving on down to 5629, we've had conversations about the airport and the runway lighting, and I believe we could defer that for at least a year. We've certainly had conflicting reports as to the need for the reseal and information that it may be able to be deferred if only light aircraft operate out of there. And there's also been proposals that would significantly reduce the cost of the runway lighting. I noticed that I imagine we've got line items and raison d'etre for 3207 and the $500,000 on the transformation program. It might be fruitful to see those. I then noticed that if you look at 1015 through to 5628, which are all the IT or digital services requirements, we're proposing to spend 1.5 million in 1 year, next this financial coming year, and very little in years thereafter. And it might be just as a matter of money management that we just defer possibly some of that. I noticed you said that we weren't rating for harbour channeling, but 4472 says we are rating 15,000. I'm wondering about the accommodation. You also talked about accommodation being pushed out, but it's showing here as only being pushed out 1 year. I thought you said it was being pushed out 2. Did I get that wrong? Did I? Oh, pushed out 1. Well, I mean, maybe we could push that out. Maybe we could spread that over 3 years and reduce the annual impost accordingly for over the 3. And at the bottom of the page, I find it staggering that whatever needs to be done at the freezer building is going to cost $250,000. I mean, surely if there's a health and safety issue, we just put a big fence around it or something, or knock it down. Pardon? What do you mean?
So it's a heritage building, and we can just knock it down, and $250,000 is just to keep it safe so that bits of roof don't fall on people's heads. Well, that's the challenge we have with that. I think the works to this building or the accommodation stuff, we debated that as a SMT, and I think if you're going to do it, it's going to fall in 1 year. We suggested pushing out a year, which is reflected in the numbers you've got here. So originally it was in for the next financial year. We pushed it to another year. You might conceivably say, hey, let's see what happens with waters before we do anything with our accommodation. But in doing that, be conscious that that's a decision to keep on with some operational costs of leasing buildings. So we lease office accommodation around the town at the moment. Just commenting on your tourism one. So when we went through this as a senior management team, we also looked at those 4 items. There's 4 items around tourism, identity, but also geopark and visitor centre, which total about 860,000 next year that you're putting effectively into visitor economy, promoting the district. And so Amanda mentioned this in her introduction as to whether you want to say, hey, our limit on promoting the district is 400,000, and we need to accommodate those activities and that support within that. So effectively cutting it by more than half of what's in the budget at the moment and saying 400,000 limit. Clearly, we need to have a discussion on how that gets carved up between geopark and visitor centres and the district identity. But that was a thought we had for you to consider in terms of reducing the spend within that area.
Just feedback on that. I think it's not too late to repurpose better off funding to water, and I think that given everything we've got going on, that would be both one way to get rid of 600,000 off the bottom line, but also provide funding for $600,000 of water projects. The ED strategy at the moment, it's for me, it's like we've just got other priorities that we need to do. So look at removing that. The visitor economy, I think, is something we can still carry on with. The airport runway, I agree with Councillor Hopkins that I think there is a need for the lighting to be renewed, and there's an ability to use new technology to get that in quite a bit less than what we were originally told, at least. And also the veranda and ticket office in the Southern Harbour, albeit that it's not in this next year, that it's 3 years out, that I don't see that being a priority for council. So I'd certainly support some of those aspects and make some cuts. Councillor McCone.
Look, I'm probably not going to make too many friends, but I think most of the page, the second page and the back page, could be just gone. The identity and storytelling, that's a very nice to have, but if you don't know your identity and need a story to tell it, well, you haven't done your homework, would be one comment. I think we should, though, pursue 5612, which is local bill to remove prohibited legislation. I think that's got merit because it will actually open the doors to removing some of the property we don't need and it's creating problems right now. As far as the airport and the penguin colony go, they are one of the few cash cows we've got. So they're almost self-funding. Well, they should have a depreciation reserve. So it's a cost to return that will give a return. And so I don't have a problem with any of that. And the bottom 4509, that's just going to take a sign. So I don't see $90,000 sign, but the bottom 3 under that, just forget about it. It's just a waste of money. But I'll still go back to what I was saying before, and that's just, I'm quite happy to wipe the whole page for both of them.
I didn't mention the freezer building, so we've waited to find a use for that building. It's risky, with erosion and various other issues. I think the sooner we can actually make it safer, the better. And whether it's partial demolition, take it down to a few blocks high so people can still see what was there and so on. Better to deal with it now. I don't think with all of the other things we've got, we can afford to spend $250,000 on just making it safe when we have never, in the last 20 years, identified any future use for it. Councillor McCone.
I think for far less than $250,000, a sign saying "Do not enter and trespass or be prosecuted" would be quite sufficient.
Councillor Blacksmith.
In all seriousness, to your point, Mayor Kircher, around the better off funding and revisiting the redistribution, I know they are projects that will will add value and not delivering them will, impact outcomes for people and initiatives in the community. But between project 4088, 4089, 4102, there's $1 million of the $4 million we're effectively looking to redistribute. And I mean, at the time of having the opportunity to shift it back to water, that was certainly my preference, and I'll just put that forward again.
Yeah, no, certainly acknowledge your comments at that time when we did reallocate some of the funding, and I guess I'm a convert. So, Councillor Thompson.
I would support that sentiment. The other question I have as a rural ratepayer, why should my rates be collected and then redistributed to promote another sector of the community, the tourism industry? I would comfortably support aged housing or funding for the disadvantaged, but I'm expected to run and be successful in my business myself, and I think anyone else in business should take that personal ownership at all as well. So I'll repeat what I said yesterday, and this is not a reflection of the great work that has been done. It's a reflection on our economic circumstances. We cannot afford to continue to underpin the geopark in today's circumstances.
Okay, what else do you need out of there? I mean, my suggestion would be, we're looking at a total of 66 million or something like that. We're told we need to focus on 8 million of that and not touch the other, but I am sure we can make reductions in the other if we were allowed to. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, look, if we assume that we're going to take the 785,000, I think it is, better off funding and reallocate it, that would leave, that would leave placemaking and district identity and the ED strategy, which incidentally I think we need an ED strategy as an income generator, and we need that's the other side of the problem we've got, that we are not earning enough money from sources other than rates. And I think a proper ED strategy could actually go a very long way to helping us overcome that shortfall or that deficiency. But if you look at the, I've just done a quick tally on all the other figures. If you look at developing the visitor economy, Waitaki identity and storytelling, then you go down to the Whitestone Geopark Discovery Hub, 50,000, Geopark 200,000, Visitor Centre 120. That bearing in mind, Mr. Palmley said before, maybe we allocate say 400,000 for tourism promotion. Added together, that all of those line items come to 910,000. Okay. So that is more than double what Mr. Palmley suggested might be an alternative approach that has been mooted by the SMT. So if we want to get money out of the budget, I would have thought that in addition to reallocating the 785,000 from better off funding for for items 4088 and 4089, we look a lot more rigorously, and Councillor Thompson's already suggested we must do so at those others. And I would have thought that we could at the very least say that the collective total for all of those those line items I've identified, it drops from 910 to say 5. And is allocated proportionally by conversation and presentation.
I do just note that it's been announced that Auckland's America's Cup hosting bid has fallen through. Perhaps we should add that into our options. Councillor Holding, that was not serious.
The bottom line here of the total projects is 8 million. But I hear officers say that they want to find 16 million. So this 8 million could all go. And we still want to find another 8.
No, I think, we've said that, we've heard what you've said on water. So, and you want to stick to that 15 million. So that will take a good chunk off that. You've then got outside of Kakinui Bridge about 9.5 million on roading. And, if you include the bridge in the event centre, that brings you up over the 50. So I think the suggestion was that 8.5 million, we need to be looking to, halve that if we can.
Just on the local bill around the legislation, I think that's something we need to do, and we very well could have done it a number of years ago, and it would have been great. Question the amount, and it would be good to have a conversation with Miles Anderson just to get an understanding of what is he able to do to support that, not just in government but getting it to Parliament. Councillor McCone.
Question, so when you mentioned the 30 mil, does that keep us inside the rate take? So when we don't borrow, we're going to come in and be self-sufficient, for want of a better word, on that number? Because the way I see it at the minute, we've just got to go back to the core, and it's about survival and income and do things that benefit all, not just some. And I think we're spread too thin on the ground to do what we're trying to deliver at the minute, and we just need to go back and actually do what we need to do properly and actually build our base again.
Yeah, when I said 30 mil, that was more like the auditor's perspective and I guess history on what we've actually achieved. So yeah, it's to do with resourcing and council staffing ability to actually get the projects out for tender and go through all those steps. So like if you think the most recent power report, I think we're sitting around $18 million CapEx spend for the year to date. So that just gives you an indication where that was probably to end of February. So we're on track to be around 30 million for the 25 financial year. And as you can see from the council decision that was made on the 17th of February, the budget that we set, I think it was around 50 million for the 25 annual plan, we got a couple of months later and deferred 20 mil. We could see straight away that 50 mil was just not achievable. And $20 million worth of projects, we decided in December we needed to defer into the 26th financial year because there's just no way that they're going to be achieved by 30 June 25. So yeah, just looking back based on history, resourcing wise, never mind the finances, it's about 30 mil. And then that's why we see like sports and event centre, we have external project management, and that's taken care of effectively. And Kakinui Bridge, same sort of story. So that's why we've said you could kind of start with a day-to-day 30 mil, waters and roading type typical works program that we've achieved in the past. And then you can add on the sports and event centre and the Kakinui Bridge. So that's where I kind of came from, that sort of rule of thumb.
So a shot in the dark, we should end up with a 0-0 balance for the rate take for 25-26. Is that what you're telling me? And secondly on that, because it's revised every 3 years, do we use that basis to do our numbers for 26, 27, 27, 28 before we have to go and revise where we're going to with the long-term plan?
Yeah, well, the next long-term plan is going to be a completely different story because we would have made a decision on waters. Like we'll know where we stand with waters. And that's where the operational budgets will change quite a bit as well, because it's around 30% of our business could potentially be moving to a separate entity. So it'll be a complete rewrite, and you'll have some rating capacity and debt capacity to take other projects on board at that point. And what was your first point?
So we're rating for a 0-0 balance this year, if we get to this $30 million figure. Well, we're not going to be operating in a deficit as opposed to having to borrow money to run our systems.
A lot of these are debt funded. This initiative's listing, the majority of it is debt funded, not rate funded. So yeah, some of it is you can see the difference that it's capital or operational written beside each of them. So yeah, some of the operational ones there do affect our rates. Obviously, better off funding is separate from rates. We receive grant funding for that. Yeah, so there's a few operational ones in there that will reduce our rates increase.
But in terms of that balanced budget, whilst it might help, it's not all the answer. So as outlined yesterday, there's probably some things we need to discuss. For example, what your policy is in terms of rating for depreciation. We mentioned yesterday that where our asset valuations for waters and roading have gone up significantly. That means your depreciation, what you're putting aside for depreciation and what you're rating for depreciation has gone up significantly. So that might be part of the solution in terms of going to that balanced budget.
Thank you. Councillor Blackler, Councillor Hopkins.
Well, thank you. Yeah, just as far as the rest of the list goes, yeah, I support the ELT recommendation to defer the Discovery Hub out. Just be interesting to see where that lands, and along the themes of conversation about pulling tourism together in general. Will a kind of separate standalone facility be required down the track? I think may or may not. Support the deferral of the sealed runway at the airport, penguin colony. Would just query if would there be any detrimental outcomes if we did defer that. Rural cemetery signage, probably not a must-have at this time. How we're having the separate conversation on water and roads. I'd really like to drill into the IT stuff, because I'm just really confused about, because we've had a few emails circulating about how everything's kind of structured in that regard, and I'm just confused about where it's all landing, because the last correspondence we had on the matter said that some of the costs were being converted from capital projects to more costed and operational, but all these here are listed as capital. So just a query around that. I'd question whether the recoding or painting of 1 Thames Street could be pushed out maybe a couple of years. Community house external refurbishment, could we get another couple of years out of that? Feasibility study, Waimaru Library. If we're not serious about it, about spending whatever the estimate was, 6.5 million, is there any point at this time? The public gardens, replacement of roses, and the Chalmers Street entrance, probably something we could cut out. The Waimaru freezer building, I just not wearing my civic trust hat at present and wearing a councillor hat. I think it's past the point of no return, and my understanding is you can get approval from Heritage New Zealand and maybe with consent of the minister to demolish if it's considered unsafe. And then Omarama Stream Reserve future management. Maybe that's not necessary at this time. Just to chuck a few more on the mix.
So what's your plan about how we gather these things together?
Okay, so thanks for all of those comments. It is really helpful. I think I think there's one to respond on the IT projects. So where possible, the work has been taken into the operation budget. Like say you're paying a salary for someone, and they're working on upgrading a system or putting in place a system or something. So you're paying for it there in the operating budget. So it's not popping onto this list anymore. So that's what we mean about it. It's taken care in operations. And then these remaining ones are typically like the capital that we have to invest in a new IT system and pay someone to put in. And that's why it's all happening in the 26 financial. It's very closely linked in with transformation. A lot of these things we need to get underway so that we can put in place our new ways of working and be a lot more customer focused, enable the community to interact with us better and that sort of thing. So that's why it's hitting hard in the 26 financial year. Where possible, we have deferred it and we have reduced that IT budget. I think you guys had a briefing from Teresa of last year with her whole program of work in the IT digital strategy. So we have reduced that somewhat. So I don't know, potentially could have another conversation around.
Well, just like the Waitaki and the cloud, for example, 200K per year, is that the integration of information, and is it the work to?
So, I mean, I think that's moving from having servers, expensive servers where you're paying for capacity you don't use, to a cloud-based system where you're only paying for the capacity you need to use. So when Teresa came along, she explained how she'd refocused the program and recast it. I think she'd taken out 3.5 million over 10 years from the program, but it's really focused on the transformation ambitions around customer and efficiency. I'm just wondering whether it's worth getting Teresa along in one of the April sessions for a bit of a revisit of that. So we'll have a session on water, session on roading, session on digital, so you can understand where that investment is going and what the benefits are. Because I think there's a danger that we cut some stuff out there, and that's adding costs back into the business that we're trying to strip out, or undermining some of the transformation ambitions in terms of what we want to do with customers. I think that there's some other areas that we need to take away. So if we come back with a recast of the tourism, so if we essentially took those line items and so this is the total amount, what could that be cast as, to if we spent half within that area, we need to have a look at the reallocation of the better off fundings and just ensure there's no contractual commitments in there that would get in the way of that. But we can bring that back and what that looks like in terms of the timing of that. And then I think we've heard a whole load of different views about what we could push out or what we could stop altogether. And I think we need to go through, because there's not necessarily the same views around the table, and recast things and say, what would it be like if we push this out, or what are the consequences of deleting this altogether from our LTP, and come back to you with that and what that looks like.
Just a couple of quick questions. One's the Penguin Colony building. What is that specifically, and is it funded by depreciation?
So there's two elements there. There was the roof, need roof replacement and a viewing platform replacement. So that's why I said earlier, ELT, like we're going to have a conversation with them around funding for that, like whether that could be lease or different alternative ways of funding that, and whether it needs to happen in that financial year. So conversations are occurring about that.
Thank you. And in the transformation 600,000 odd, as much as you've said this is all up for cutting, what is that specifically to pay for?
So that's mainly, I think, in terms of the team costs, the temporary team in seeing out the final stages of delivery of the programme. So we have questioned that as to whether we could bring that to a close earlier, but we think there'll be consequences of not being able to deliver the remainder of the programme. So I think it represents half year costs for the team and working budgets for them.
Thank you. Councillor Hopkins.
Yes, just track line single like, picking up on Councillor Blacklist's comments. I too had noted 5614, the repainting, community house external refurbishment, partnership collaboration portal and tools, the Chelmer Street entrance, and the library feasibility study. If you add those together, that's $500,000, $575,000 worth of savings on that page. And if you flip over to the next page and look at breakwater feasibility study and the land review, that comes to 127 plus, I think, Councillor Blacklow's suggestion regarding the Marama Stream Reserve. So you've got the thick end of 700 or more thousand just there, plus the other specific items that we've talked about. So if you are going to have a look at line items that have then I would just ask that all the line items that have been identified by councillors this morning are included in that review.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're very much working on a system of trust here, and I'd like to be quite explicit. I do trust what you're doing, but I also challenge whether, if we as a group say, let's defer this, is it going to cost us more down the track? We need officers to be able to come back and tell us that saving 50K now is going to cost us 200K in 3 years now, if we do that. So that's just a reflection. The other thing is, thank you very much for the work that you put in. I intend to flag to my colleagues that maybe we also need to look at how we cut our costs in an austere time. And I'll flag that I intend to suggest that we withdraw from local government New Zealand, because we pay a large fee to that organisation, and whether we're getting a return on our investment, I don't know. But I believe that it's an example of where, and on our patch, we can look at cost saving.
What do we pay? So that seems like
that's something we can look into and bring back for discussion on the 15th, if you like, when we talk about operating budgets.
Well, I think it should be all membership organisations we're part of. So we get a lot of value out of LGNZ, but we get do we get a lot of value out of everything that we are members of?
Okay, so you want a listing of everything that everything we pay memberships towards.
Well, if
to discuss on the 15th.
Councillor Thompson wants to, look under that particular op, let's do it thoroughly.
Cool. So we have some time this afternoon. We can talk about exact logistics over lunch and make a plan, but we were wanting to use that time. Obviously, there's some big ticket items that we consulted on. We've got some direction from the public that we talked about yesterday. So we kind of wanted to whiz through those and get direction from you where we should, what we should do in terms of locking in the final long-term plan numbers. We can also, where possible, have some of these strategic conversations. Like obviously we consulted on whether to have a separate EDA and what to do with tourism, Waitaki and the penguin colony. That was one of our consultation document topics. So we'd like to talk about that this afternoon and potentially get some clear direction on the level of spend you want to put aside for tourism and things. So we'll try to put them in specific little pockets for discussion this afternoon and set timeframes for each topic. And then where possible, it'll be good to get some direction so that we can pull some analysis together and look at the outcomes on the 15th of April.
Thank you. Right, we are at lunchtime now, so we will take a break. So this afternoon, 1 o'clock, we've got the Canterbury Water Management Strategy Zone Committee review with representatives of ECAN. So I think that's just being done as a briefing. We'll be recommencing the deliberations at 1:45 PM. So with that, we'll adjourn. Thank you very much, everyone.